Well, let's get more on this. We're joined by Jonthan Rynhold. He's head of the Department of Political Studies at Bar-Ilan University, and he's joining us live from Tel Aviv. Very good to have you with us on Al Jazeera. Just how big a threat would you say these protests are to Prime Minister Netanyahu and his government?
So I would say that they're on their own. They can't bring down the government or stop the reforms, but they encourage more and more people and economic investors in Israel and trade unions to strike and to withdraw their funding. And together it's creating unprecedented pressure. And it is a serious problem for him because it indicates that even if he were to succeed in passing the reforms in the Knesset, in the Israeli parliament, he could have incredible difficulty implementing them.
And what about Israel's relationship with its Western allies? The U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is in the country. He's confined to the airport because of the protests. How does, what are the optics of that? Do you think that this is something that Lloyd Austin will bring up with the Israeli government?
I'm sure he will mention it, but I'm sure it won't be the focus of his discussion. Israel's relations with the West, with the United States and Western Europe, have two components. One component will remain stable, irrespective of what's going on inside Israel, and that is that they share common interests and common enemies, particularly Iran and radical Islamic terrorist organizations. In that context, the only concern will be whether Israel is able to fulfill its traditional role as an ally in this regard, given its internal divisions. Over the longer term, though, particularly on the center the center-left of American politics and the center-right and center-left in European politics, the fact that Israel is a democracy is central to the underlying support for Israel. And were these reforms to be passed and implemented and lead to, over time, the loss of independence of the Israeli judiciary and pose a threat to individual and minority rights in Israel, that could severely damage Israel's relations with the US and with Western Europe.
What about the ongoing violence in the occupied territories, Mr. Rynhold? Do you think that that's something that Lloyd Austin is likely to say anything new about on this visit?
I think that he will emphasize, and here it's much easier for the United States because it's an external issue. It's not intervening in Israeli domestic politics. I think he will pressure Netanyahu heavily to take a cautious and careful approach so as not to escalate the violence. Now, normally, Mr. Netanyahu would support that approach in any case. However, his far-right extreme coalition partners favor a far more robust approach. And that is something that could set things alight here. And that is something that the US and the Israeli security establishment would very much like to avoid.
And do you think that the escalation in violence that we've seen over the last few months, is that because of the new coalition partners that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu finds himself with in this government?
So the Israeli security services have been warning for over a year that the level of tension in the West Bank has been increasing. The underlying causes of that are twofold. First of all, the failure to have any progress in the peace process. And secondly, the strong sense in the occupied territories that the Palestinian Authority is corrupt and inefficient and is increasingly authoritarian. So all of those things together provided a tense situation. And the fact that this government, with its far-right coalition partners, has come in, has only intensified that tension.
Mr. Rynhold, it's great to get your insights on this. We do appreciate it. That is Jonthan Rynhold joining us live from Tel Aviv. Thank you.